Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Wish Dragon. Wish Dragon is based on some Chinese folklore that was also ended up influencing the legend and folklore that would end up becoming the film Aladdin. So there are a certain amount of similarities since they're sort of based on the same thing, but this is obviously more from the Chinese folklore, although that might be a concern. You might feel like this might be derivative. You've seen it before. It feels like often the filmmakers understood what that film did and were consciously making a different movie. And I really like that about it because it often could get very close to it since they are based on the same source material, but it was conscious enough to be a very different movie, a very Chinese film, because it's based on Chinese folklore, made by a studio that wants to make stories for China, basically. Not Sony Animation, the other studio it worked for in this. And that's going on all throughout it, but I found this film very refreshing. Both its take on the story itself and also the kind of main kind of plot line put this film in I don't think this is the greatest kids film in the world, but its differences make this a lot more kind of remarkable and almost like a film I think actually kids should see, and is probably a much better animated film than a lot of kind of the more, when you get to the more standard fare that a lot of kids end up actually watching. So Wish Dragon is about a kid named Din who very much wants to see his childhood friend Li Na. They've been friends their whole lives, and she left when they were 9. She went off and became much more wealthier, and he stayed in this kind of small lower class area basically. She moved on, and he sees advertisements for her and stuff because she's a model, and he thinks he's going to show up at her birthday party and become friends with her again. And then but he knows that's probably, that seems very unlikely that'll really work out. But then he finds a teapot, and in the teapot is a wish dragon, and this wish dragon, voiced by John Cho, named Long. Long has been forced onto Earth. He has to serve 10 masters, grant them each 3 wishes, and then he can finally go to the spirit world. Long helps him out, gives him cool kung fu moves, so this movie has great action sequences, which I think was by design. It also makes a little more sense in the Chinese version because Long is voiced by Jackie Chan, who is a producer on this film. He just obviously doesn't voice him in the American version, but that plot point makes a lot more sense under that. To be honest with you, it just feels like, why would that matter? Well, it seems cool, but anyway, makes more sense then. Or that he just knows martial arts. I don't think he has a certain kind of martial arts. He's just really good at martial arts. I shouldn't have named him Kung Fu or anything like that. But still, if it was Jackie Chan, it made more sense. So he does that to kind of impress his long friend Lina, and hopefully he can, or Lena, but it's actually Lina, L-I-N-A, that he wants to impress her and become friends with her again because he misses their friendship, as where he has to fight off goons who are trying to take the teapot from him and the wish dragon and all sorts of complications. And he does the whole lying to her thing about his wealth and all sorts of stuff like that. Kind of what you expect from a story like this, with some interesting complications. Now, the one thing I really like about this film, a lot actually, and particularly for a kid's film, in fact a film in general, because this happens so often, is the idea that his childhood friend is a girl, and that there's no and then they fall in love, and he has a huge crush on her, and he's had a huge crush on her since she was 9. There's sort of hints at possibly, but ultimately he just wants his friend back. He doesn't care about the idea of romance with her. She's portrayed as a pretty young girl in the film. Certainly he might be attracted to her or something, but it's not the point of the story. And I really appreciated that, actually. I think that was actually very progressive, because I know we all talk about normalize this, normalize that and stuff, and that's all important, but I think within this film, particularly for kids, because we're so pushing men and women are together and heteronormality and all this shit, it's great to have them just be friends. They're just friends. He just wants to see his friend. That's really what he wants, and he loves her as a friend. I thought was really excellent, a great moral for kids, actually. I didn't actually get to see this with my daughter because I wasn't sure about it, and I wanted to shoot this in a certain time and all those things, but I came out of him I think that all kids should actually see this because it's actually really good, and it's not pushing the idea that they're just friends. It just pushes that it's a natural thing, which it is. 2 people of opposite sex can be friends and not romantically involved. So I found that to be really great, as well as the idea of having these 3 wishes. And that's really what hit me the most about this, is because the whole idea of the story of Aladdin, or the basic story of like someone who's poor who gets 3 wishes and everything they can do with it. And I think so often when you think of the idea of like, oh, if I were to have 3 wishes, I'd obviously ask for a pile of money, or like to win the lottery, or to have like, Action Comics #1 or whatever, just to have wealth and everything like that. And maybe that is, even the dragon Long himself says that happens quite often. I did really like that this film went for someone who wanted something different. And I thought that was actually morally, this is folklore and stories that are supposed to kind of have a moral and a message to them. And I really appreciated that. I thought that was actually a really great idea within this film. As well as I think John Cho does a really great performance. He pretty much steals the movie in this. He's really great as Long. That's a really great character. And hearing like what he went through and how he is where he is now and everything like that. And I like that his design, it obviously is meant to pop out from everything else that's going on, but it's a really great design, and John Cho does a really good job with it, at least obviously I saw the American one. This is made by Base Animation primarily, who is a kind of animation wing of an FX company, Base FX. And Base Animation is basically trying to make world-class animation in China for China. And then was, I guess, sort of given money for something. I'm not sure Sony's involvement in this. And then was just thrown to Netflix because of Corona and all this stuff. And it's interesting seeing a film that is so much a different country's perspective, but also I think it's not made in a way that looks like a different country's film language. It feels like the film language of animation blockbuster, which I guess is international and anyone can get into. So if you don't see a lot of foreign films, this is probably a great one to see, because you almost won't feel like you're watching one. The one thing about Wish Dragon I liked the most was the morals it was pushing. Like, if you were to ask yourself, it almost makes you think, if you were to ask yourself what you would really want if you had 3 wishes, you probably wouldn't ask for something for money, you would ask for something from the heart. And I found that to be a really great message and everything like that. I found the idea of taking a story from a different folklore perspective, wherever these stories originated from, I get the feeling we'll never actually figure that out. But so the understanding of what the director has said, that it came from a Chinese folklore first. I appreciated actually a folklore that we've heard in one culture, primarily with Aladdin, told from a different perspective, was actually really interesting. You used to get that more in kind of classic Hollywood. You'd be like, well, let's do the same story, but let's have it set here with this thing and everything. I remember they did it with like High Sierra and maybe Ride the White Country or something. It was like one with Humphrey Bogart. They did another version with a cowboy, and it was kind of interesting. And in this, you could look at them those 2 different ways, and audiences were a little more perceptive to that, mostly because you couldn't watch these things anytime you wanted. So maybe that had a little to do with it. But this, I really quite liked what it was trying to do and what it was trying to say about the greed of humanity, what you would want if you had like unlimited power to have your wishes. And the character of Din, who is the kid who ends up with this wish dragon, kind of is a good way to kind of cut through the crap, because he has his heart on his sleeve. What he wants is to have his old friend back after 10 years, his childhood friend that meant so much to him. And it kind of bases down like, what you really want is connection, what you really want is, family. What you really want is something that's within the heart and not just money. Although money would be good. He could have used one of them wishes on that. Even though he uses one for like 24 hours, boy, geez, just that's embarrassing. This was a nice little movie. I like what it was doing with the folklore. I liked the animation. I don't think it popped too much character design wise or anything like that, other than Long, the Wish Dragon. I thought that was actually a really great design, but everything else was just kind of like, okay. It didn't stand out to me. None of the shots or the cinematography were that too much awe-inspiring for the most part. I think there's some exceptions to that. However, I thought the overall message of the film, what the film was trying to attempt to do, what it was trying to say with this folklore, the message it was passing on to his younger demographic, I really like that. I thought they did an excellent job, because ultimately this is to tell, and what I've read from the directors written on Twitter and interviews and so forth, he really wanted to tell this story from a Chinese perspective, and make Chinese films for China, basically. One of the things I like about Tom Moore and Cartoon Saloon as well is that I like the idea of passing on stories and folklore to future generations through filmmaking. That's like storytelling. That's how storytelling has worked forever. You have these stories and you pass them on to future generations, usually by telling them a story, like having a storyteller come to your town and tell the story. Obviously, technology has evolved, and Wish Dragon is kind of that natural evolution of technology, much like the cartoon saloon stuff is with Irish folklore. This is the same with Chinese folklore, and I think it is actually very nice and very natural and very wonderful that we are doing that. We should actually do more of that, frankly, and I like the message and the morals it's pushing, and its different version of a story that it obviously was aware of, you'd be thinking of the whole time, and didn't want to repeat, and actively tried not to do that. And I think they actually did a pretty good job, and you leave, like most folklore, with a good message and moral to think about. And to be honest, it's probably a film that will leave you with deeper thoughts than you probably think it ever would, which is, I think, says more about the power of the storytelling in it. I think in terms of this film, I think of how powerful the storytelling is, and how much this director used the folklore and a great story from eons to really push this to future generations, which I think is pretty remarkable. So if you have seen Wish Dragon and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.